So,
Great. Well, welcome everyone to the first general meeting of the Whitaker Community Council for 2022. My name's Ian, and tonight we're going to be joined by some wonderful speakers who are going to share some information about everything as varied from how do we enrich our urban tree canopy to library services and making them more accommodating for the residents of the Whitaker, to how we prepare as a community and come together in order to make our neighborhood more resilient for everyone. Before I do that, I wanted to share just a quick slideshow that'll share a little bit more information about who we are and what we do. Can everyone see this little screen with letters? Perfect. So who we are? Well, the Whitaker Community Council is your neighborhood association. We're one of the 23 neighborhood associations recognized by the city of Eugene, and we advocate on behalf of the neighbors to the city of Eugene through a process which has existed since the 1970s. What makes the Whitaker Community Council unique is that we're also a nonprofit organization that's actually existed just as long and that has for almost 50 years now advocated for our community in ways that a neighborhood association can't alone. And so who we are, well, we're your neighbors. As you can see from the bus in this photograph, as well as the people standing in front of it, those are board members past and present who have worked on your behalf to make sure that our community stays safe and healthy during COVID, but we do loads of different projects, and I'm going to share a few of those with you now. So like I said, we help each other out. We've been running wellness clinics where we offer free COVID-19 vaccinations and testing. We did over 1,000 vaccinations over the course of 2021, and we've been lucky enough to do even more vaccines this year for our 5 through 11-year-old population, as well as 12 and above through our clinics in partnership with Whitebird, as well as Lane County Public Health and HIV Alliance and others. We've also been passing out these hand sanitizer stations to members of the community. We just passed out some COVID tests over the weekend, and we're going to be passing out N95 masks, the real ones, not the fake ones that you get hoodwinked on Amazon for, but the real ones in another couple of weeks. They're hard to come by, as you can imagine these days, but they're on their way. We also pass out hydration supplies and food to some of our most vulnerable neighbors. This is a group of us, both volunteers with the Whitaker Community Council and folks who are on the board, passing out hydration supplies to the folks camping at the Washington Jefferson Park. And through our other work, we also put on a monthly art walk, which is in hiatus right now. It's in its natural slumber, but it'll come back online fairly soon. We also give out small grants when we have the funding for it to Whitaker performing and visual artists, so we can bring some socially distanced, COVID-safe good times to the neighborhood and celebrate our vibrant visual and performing arts communities. And how we do this is, well, we make stuff happen through our committees that any of y'all can join. So our Public Health and Safety Committee is chaired by Anand. Hi, Anand. You can wave, say hello to Anand. Anand is a longtime board member and Whitaker resident and a public health nurse who also volunteers his time with Occupy Medical. We have a social justice committee that really led our work to make sure our unhoused neighbors stay safe and hydrated. Our Whitaker Community Art Team puts on our artworks, and our transportation committee makes sure that we have bikeable, walkable streets that provide mobility and access to equitable transportation options for everyone. And they have a really fun project that is going to be in the neighborhood soon of passing out yard signs that promote 20 is plenty and street safety. So what can you do? Well, you can get involved. If you are interested in any of the projects we shared, or maybe you want to advocate for one of your own. The traffic signs were created by a Whitaker community member. They said, hey, you should have traffic signs. And so we can put them in our yard and make sure our streets stay safe. And we said, yep, that's an awesome idea. So we went ahead and found the funding for it and then did it. And now we also have signs around the neighborhood to prevent COVID and also maintain high vaccine confidence. So feel free to grab one of your yard signs for either COVID or for street safety in the coming weeks. But yeah, come to a committee meeting, come to the general meetings. We're gonna have public comment in just a minute. And this is for you to share your comments, your concerns, your ideas, your passions, because our community council is really your community council too. It's made up of us, we the neighbors, and we're here to serve you. So today we have a jam-packed agenda with a bunch of fun stuff. We're gonna jump onto public comment in just a second. And then after that, we're going to be passing it on to Eric DeBoard, the Urban Forestry Supervisor for Parks and Open Spaces for the City of Eugene, who's going to be talking about preserving our urban canopy for future generations. Then we're going to be passing it on to Ashley Cisna with Eugene Water and Electric Board, a communication specialist too. That's actually wrong. It says preserving our trees for future generations. She's actually not going to be talking about that. She's going to be talking about pledging to prepare, the program to make communities more resilient to potential disaster. And last, we're going to talk with Willow Hearn, who's the Director of Library Services for the City of Eugene, talking about how to make sure that Whitaker residents can have access to library services. So please bring your comments, your questions. But before we do that, I wanted to talk about how to participate. So for those of you who are joining for your first time, welcome. You certainly don't have to have your video screen on during any of tonight's meeting. We are recording this so that folks who aren't here can make sure they can see what's going on and listen to us learn and share. But please mute yourself unless you're talking. And there is a queue to speak, and it's first come, first serve. So those of you who put up your hand first or voice your interest in participating first are going to be the first that I put in the queue to talk. And you can raise your interest, you can raise your voice by a couple of different ways. You can raise your virtual hand, which I don't know if someone can show us how it's done by just raising your virtual hand really quick. Perfect. Gail did that. Thanks so much, Gail. And you can raise your actual hand too, and that's going to be a signal to me that you have an interest in participating, like Gail and myself are doing. You can voice your interest in participating through the Zoom chat function, and make sure to just type in like, hey, I want to talk, or Ian, quit ignoring me, or gosh, we need a different facilitator. And those are going to be ways to make sure that I know that we have folks in the queue who want to be able to talk. And if you're calling on a telephone, all you need to do is say your first name. So if Pat was calling in with the phone, Pat would say Pat, and that would be the signal to me that they want to participate. So we're just so thrilled that we have such a great lineup of speakers, really excited to get into the agenda tonight. And let's start with public comment. This can be board members, this can be members of the community, this can be speakers. What quick things do you want to share before we get into tonight's agenda? Does anyone have anything that they want to share with the community? I see Stephen's hand first. There's some stuff that I want to share as well. Does anybody else want to be added to the queue? All right, with that, we'll start with Stephen. Stephen and then Thea. Stephen, go right ahead.
I have an announcement. The Polk 2 project will be on the City Council agenda at 7:30 on Monday, January 24th. Dan represented the council in the panel assessment of comparing the project with another project that's applying for funding. And the Polk 2 project scored very well. So now it's gone on to the City Council. For those that are not familiar with the project, Polk 2 is on North Polk Street, and it's an expansion of a project to provide housing for young people who've aged out of foster care. It's an alternative to be on the street after coming out of foster care. So it's a very worthwhile project, and the council has endorsed the project with support letter in the past. I don't yet know whether a support letter will be needed for this. I will wait until I have seen the packet for the meeting, and I'll alert you if support is needed.
Thanks so much, Stephen. I put some more information about the Polk 2.0 Polk or Polk. There's no quiz at the end of this, so y'all can jump on there to find out some more information. And then I'll also put the full list of the requests for proposals for affordable housing development programs through the Zoom chat as well. Thea, you are next in the queue, and then we'll open it up to anyone else. Thea?
So a couple things. I will be meeting with Chief Skinner on Friday, and I will be putting up some questions or getting Claire to put up questions. If you, next February, our February general meeting, he'll be joining us, and I'd like to give him some things to be thinking about ahead of time. I will be discussing the issues our businesses have been having with some of the illegal behavior in front of them by some of the unhoused people that have been removed from Washington, Jefferson, and 13th and Chambers camps. And we've had a few businesses that have had a really rough time lately, a lot of thefts, a lot of damage, a lot of break-ins. I have been in contact with the railroad people as well, because it's really unsafe for the people that are living on the tracks. And it's very, very unsanitary right now. And it looks like they've moved themselves over to 2nd and Van Buren. So I was talking with the city today, and Kelly McIver has asked that if any business or any resident is having issues, that they get an incident number and that they write it down. And if they have to call back because their incident has gotten dropped down in the queue, that they write down the times they call back. So if they have to call 2 or 3 days in a row, he wants to know that so that we can start tracking the lack of response we're getting when we are having issues. And I will be having a conversation with him and a conversation with Claire on how we can all work together to support our unhoused and our housed, because it's becoming critical mass at this point. I had a lot of phone calls between Christmas and New Year's with people at their wits' ends, and they were afraid to leave their homes or couldn't get into a business. So maybe I can put my email in the queue for anyone who has specific comments that doesn't already have it. And I think that's it for now. And thank you, everybody. And then, oh, I really want to thank Doriandra for the clinic this weekend. She had tons of volunteers that were out because of COVID, and she is doing a hell of a lot more than we asked her to do from the very beginning. So we need to be aware of that. She's like a rock star, guys. She busted her butt and pulled it off, and we need to thank her. And that's it. Questions?
Great. Is there anybody else who wants to jump into the public comment queue for tonight? Well, before we jump into our speaker lineup, I just wanted to say that now is a super stressful time. I know that just for me, I have a family health crisis right now, and it's really, really stressful having someone in the hospital on top of everything else. And with COVID numbers the way that they are, I just want to remind everyone that we're in this together and that we need to stay strong for each other, especially the times when we're the most stressed out, when we feel like we can't give anymore. I think the first thing that we need to do is make sure that we give to ourselves so that we can take care of each other, because we've been doing a pretty great job of taking care of each other in the Whitaker right now, but we need to make sure that we can still take care of ourselves. So tonight, when we have our speakers come through, just remember that there's a lot that we can't see of folks, what they're going through, how difficult childcare is, how stressful it is to not be able to visit family members. So I hope that we can cut each other some slack, and also, just keep on keeping on, making sure our community is vaccinated, make sure that we all have access to tests, make sure that we have access to personal protective equipment, and get through this next wave together. So just wanted to say thanks for the work that everyone's doing. I know that it's really, really stressful, but the best way that we're going to get through this is by continuing to work together, especially when times get really stressful. So Thea, I see your hand up.
And please take care of one another. The hospital has officially gone into crisis mode. It's not in our news, but I do know because my nephew is currently back in the hospital, and they are not allowing anyone in, and they are triaging who gets care. So please, please take care of yourselves and each other.
Thanks for that, Thea. We had Anand put his hand up, and then Jen put her hand up as well. So we've got Anand in the queue, and then Jen. Anand?
Thanks, Ian. I just want to emphasize what both Ian and Thea have just said. Absolutely watch out for things, watch out for each other. Do not get sucked into this idea that why not just get COVID and get it over with, which has been going around. Don't, just don't. Even if you're double vaccinated and boosted, and you think that the latest Omicron variation is not going to be that bad, don't do it. There's a whole bunch of reasons why you shouldn't, but the most important thing is not only can you get it still, you can still spread it to other people. And there are a lot of people out there who either can't get vaccinated or the vaccines don't work as well for them, or even if they do work okay, they may have a lot of pre-existing conditions which could still put them in the hospital or on a ventilator. So yeah, don't get sucked into that. Be careful, take care of yourselves. Thank you, Ian, and thank you, Thea. Well done.
Thanks so much, Anand. And I just wanted to let people know that I'm pulling double duty tonight and also writing the minutes. So I'm going to reach out to you individually and ask you some fun questions. What's your star sign? What's your moon sign? Do you live, work, or own property in the Whitaker? The first two I may not ask, but the third one I'm definitely asking. So yeah, if I slide into your Zoom chats, it's because I'm taking the minutes as well. Jen, you're next in the queue.
Goodness. I'd like to know if testing is available for any of the board members of the WCC. I'm traveling to go see my aunt before she passes away, and that's in the 24th. But I don't know from day to day, like a lot of people, whether we're going to be required to be tested before we go. I've never asked for anything, but if it's not appropriate for a board member to get any kind of testing before I go on a plane, which I'm terrified of, but I'd like to know. And if you can tell me where I can get tested, I'd appreciate it. This is a big step for me. I haven't been anywhere for over 2 years, 2.5 years. And, you know, as Anand and everybody knows, Omicron is really wreaking havoc, even if you are fully vaccinated. I've had 11 people, excuse me, who have got COVID, and they were all vaccinated, boosted, and everything. So I'm feeling sad.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that, Jen. And I see Margaret's hand up and Claire's hand up, and it's really tragic that we can't travel to family members quickly, especially when we want to see them the most. So in the chat, I'm going to be putting in resources for you, Jen, for how to register for testing at the University of Oregon, which is really quick and really safe. But Claire, I saw your hand up, and then I saw Margaret's hand up as well. So they might have some resources as well. Claire?
Two things, Jen. Number one, I have an at-home COVID test that I will deliver to your house that you can have if you need it, if / want it. Second thing is I will help you sign up at the testing site just across the river from us. You know, you live right off the river path as well, so I know that. So it's really easy to walk over there, or I don't know if you're able to walk or what, if you want to or whatever, but that one is very, very close, and I can help you out with that offline to sign up if you're interested in that. Just let me know.
Thank you so kindly, Claire. Can I just contact you personally?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Go ahead. Margaret, you were next in the.
I think, Jen, I feel you, and I'm sorry for your situation, and it is definitely I understand you being a little apprehensive about getting on a plane at this point. And if they haven't changed the laws or the recommendations, whatever you want to call them, recently, I believe that you are required to get a PCR test and have the results within 48 hours or before 48 hours of you flying out. So that would not be a rapid test. That would not be an at-home test. I do know that the University of Oregon that Ian just put in does a PCR test. I do believe that, I'm sorry? Oh, I do believe that what Claire is talking about is one as well. And I don't know if you have a primary care physician that you see on a regular basis, but I had a PCR test not too long ago, and I just drove through in my car at Mackenzie Willamette, and I had the results. I think it probably takes a little bit longer to get results now. I would tell them when you're flying, and they'll tell you when to take the test, but you just drive right through and they do it, and then they email them to you. But it takes a couple of days to get them back because it's not like a rapid test.
Thank you for that.
So, yeah.
I have a prescription from my doctor because at the time I was thinking about coming home and getting tested to protect the people that are here. But now things have changed so quickly. I didn't realize that you had to have a PCR, so I'll have to call my doctor, but I don't know about all the differences.
I would clarify that. That's what it was before. I don't know exactly what it is. I don't know if it's changed or not. But I think that's what they'll ask if you're required to have a test to fly.
I thought that was international. I didn't know it was domestic. So I guess I will have to check into it. Thank you for that information. I feel up in the air, but it'll all get resolved. And if it's my time, it's my time.
Dan, you had your hand up as well, and then we'll go to public comment after you. Or not public comment, we'll go into our first speaker after you.
Okay, great. Yeah, just a quick addendum to what Jen and Margaret were saying is that curative, this is what I put in the chat. You can look them up online. They do a PCR test, and the turnaround for results is they advertise 3 hours, but I've gotten mine emailed to me in 2. They have a rapid antigen test too, but they have the 99% accurate PCR test. And I've used it for every time I've traveled or gone to visit anybody. I go jump in there. They take every form of insurance, and it's a really easy online sign up. So I'd recommend that for anybody that has something that's just really pressing and coming right up. And I've flown a couple times in COVID, and honestly, I felt totally safe the whole time because they're cuckoo about keeping people's masks on both in the airports and on the airplane. And the airplane air is supposedly about the best air that you can encounter, maybe other than like the top of Skinner's Butte or something like that. But anyway, that's that.
Yeah, thanks for that, Dan. And I think cuckoo is the airline terminology that's used by Delta. I think Southwest, I think each individual airline uses their own terminology. So don't get bogged down in the nomenclature. Well, thanks for the lively back and forth. And just to let folks know, I'll share again the testing locations that are available towards the end of the meeting, just in case folks weren't able to get those. We're really lucky to have Eric again, the Urban Forestry Supervisor with Parks and Open Spaces for the City of Eugene. Eric previously joined us in December, but we had Eric towards the end of the meeting, and there was just so much to cover, particularly about how we might be able to proactively work together. And Eric shared some pretty amazing tools with us for how to be able to measure urban forest canopy, and talked a little bit about how we might be able to work together more effectively to do something that we both want apparently, which is get more trees, more urban canopy cover in our community, and preserving the existing canopy cover. And really got a shout out to Eric and Eric's team over at the city, because they worked with loads of community members, council members, Siret, to save a single tree by giving it kind of a tree haircut. But yeah, I know that Eric and his team's work is a lot more than just cutting a couple of branches off. So again, welcome back, Eric. We're super grateful to have you, and really excited to dive in a lot deeper in how we might be able to work together, but also kind of what you do and why you do it, because I was just astounded by how much I don't know. I thought trees were just pretty, and sometimes they drop fruit, and sometimes they host squirrels that make my girlfriend's dog go crazy. But yeah, apparently they serve a lot more purposes in the city, and the city has a much more far-ranging strategy than just creating dog harassing squirrel habitat. So would love for you to touch on that a little bit more about why urban canopy is so important, and kind of the role that neighborhood associations and individual residents can play with the city to work together to make sure that we preserve trees and make space for more ones too.
Well, thank you, Ian. I really appreciate you inviting me back, and it's good to see everybody again. I certainly recognize a lot of faces, so it's good to see folks, and I'm happy to come and talk anytime you would like. So just let me know. And first, what I'd like to do is actually just circle back to the big leaf maple that was there on 3rd and Adams. I just wanted to show, I'll share my screen here, but part of the process of really kind of looking inside the tree to determine how much decay was actually in there, to determine whether or not we would keep the tree or not, was to use a tool called a resistograph. And it actually is a drill. But the drill bit is very tiny. I mean, it's less than a 32nd of an inch, so it's very, very thin. And you can actually you can just bore into the tree and you'll get a readout that I'll show you here. It actually measures the amount of decay, or very specifically measures the amount of resistance that the drill bit encounters as it goes into the branch. And it gives us a very basic look into the inside of those branches. And we actually did some test spots on the trunk. And then the cavity that is left is so tiny. It's much smaller than you would even see for a lot of boring insects. So the tree can handle it just fine. So yeah, let me share my screen here. And I just did a snapshot. So can you see this okay with my cursor moving around? Perfect. It very much looks like a seismograph that you might see for a volcanic reading. And it's very much the same. Well, I don't want to say it's the same principle, but similar. And so we read these actually going right to left. And so when the drill bit goes in, you can see like on this very topmost piece that this was probably a thick piece of bark. The resistance dropped back off, but you can see we start the slope that goes back up. And this shows me that we have good resistance here. And I don't get too worried about the peaks and the valleys, but I'm looking for consistent resistance. And then when we see these big drop-offs, these big valleys, like you'll see here in the 1st, 2nd, and especially in the 5th reading here, that just shows me that we have decay. And again, I'm not worried so much about the valley. I'm just worried that there's a drop-off. So these were the top 5 that you see here. These were the 5 major branches that we were concerned about. And they actually fared really well. I have to be honest. I was really shocked. It was kind of good to be wrong on this one. I was actually happy to be wrong, because what we were seeing from the outside was really telling me that there would be a lot of decay in those major branches. And what I'm actually seeing when we do a little bit of further research, that's actually not the case. That's actually very helpful and hopeful for the tree to be retained. It's telling me that we can do this. So we'll remove these branches here that have the bigger cavities. To be honest, I don't think people notice too much of a difference on the tree itself. And then on this bottom resistograph, it's just showing some test plots that we did in the trunk. And there's actually about 5 different readings on the same graph. I was really not that concerned about the trunk, but while we were there, I just wanted to see what was going on the inside, and it's solid as could be. So that's all really good news. And we still got to schedule the work, but that will happen fairly soon, and folks will probably see us out there. We'll put some no parking signs out a little bit in advance, and we'll do the work. But like I said, the pruning is not going to be that drastic. But there's one thing that I want to mention that I have concern about. It's the tree swing that's in the tree is in a really bad spot. It's the branch that's in there is really decayed. So we need to do something about the swing. And it's kind of heartbreaking on one end, because I talked to one of the gentlemen that lives in the house right next to it, and he said he goes out there sometimes, and that's really his spot that he likes to go. It's helped him with depression and tough times, and so to have to remove something like that is not something we want to do. But that branch is really, really decayed, and I worry about with people swinging on it. I just feel terrible if somebody was out there and that came down. So that's something we haven't done that yet, and I've reached out to Councilor Surratt to hopefully put some messaging out there that this is probably going to be something that happens. But we would be agreeable to certainly I looked at the tree with a gentleman that I spoke with, and there wasn't a lot of other good spots on the tree to put the swing that wouldn't have you, or the tire swing that wouldn't have you out in the street or over the sidewalk. But we talked about maybe just installing a post with a kind of a small tiered swing set or something in the right of way next to it. There's lots of things we can do. So I worry about that particular branch, but I don't also know that that's an important swing to folks, and I don't want to see that go away. So that was the one thing that I was a little bit concerned about, because I know folks aren't going to be happy about that, but at the same time, that branch is really bad, and that swing is way out on the branch. So, and it's probably a 200 to 300 pound branch that would come down and hit somebody. So, but I'm certainly open to ideas, but I just wanted to get that out there. But yeah, we will certainly be able to retain the tree. That's exciting for us too. We don't want to lose it if we don't have to. All the branches on the house side were perfectly fine. We didn't see any decay on those, so that's all really good news. And I didn't really have, this is kind of last minute for me, which is fine. So it's fairly informal. So I'm just going to work through our new tool that we have, unless anybody has any questions about the big leaf maple at Third and Adams. If we don't, I'll move on to the canopy assessment tool.
I just wanted to chime in. Thanks for sharing that. It kind of looks like footsteps of Godzilla. Reminds me of an early 2000s movie. Dan said, "Are we talking about Duke's tree?" So we've got a nickname for it, and yep, we're talking about Duke's tree. We are indeed. So just wanted to put that in there for Dan and anyone else who knows the tree by a different name.
Again, we look at these trees initially, making our best kind of visual assessments, but we're always happy to investigate further. That's just part of the process. So this was actually a really good one. I felt like, because it kind of also helped introduce us, right? So this is the other benefit that we have. So we have FaceTime together, and folks now hopefully feel comfortable. If they have questions, you can always reach out to me. So that was the other really good thing that came out of all this. So I'm going to go ahead and bump over to, I'm working with a new split screen monitor here, so you have to bear with me. New share. Okay, here we go. So now let's bump over. Can everybody see the map of Eugene here? Excellent. So this is tree plotter canopy. I sent this out after the last, or I think I might have actually put it in the chat of the last meeting, and I don't know if folks have had a chance to play around with it. It's fairly, it's tree centered, but it's fairly user friendly. But the nice thing about this, when you look at the different partitions that you see on the screen right now, these are census block groups. I'm going to scroll through these. We can get down to the census block, actually, which is a very, very small increment. You can see we're, well, like here's Monroe Park. It's actually comprises essentially 2 of those census blocks. So it allows us to get down to a fairly small scale. And we can also go by neighborhood as well. And of course, the Whitaker neighborhood would be right here. And we can see that, we have 26% canopy cover. That's really good. That's fairly close to our 30% target, but you can also see that the canopy change has gone down about 2% in the last, well, between 2011 and 2019. That's actually a fairly slow loss to where we're, compared to what we're seeing in other parts of town. Some of the, on the higher end, we're seeing 13, 14% loss in that same time frame, and that's concerning for us. But we have lots of big trees in the Whitaker that still have a lot of life left. We also have a lot of planting areas that we can hopefully correct the canopy loss, introduce some age diversity and success, forest succession, and kind of turn this back around and hopefully get the Whitaker pretty quickly back up to that 30% that we're trying to get to. And some of the things that certainly help out, we've got Skinner's Butte Park and a few areas, all the kind of the corridor along the river that, strictly from a canopy standpoint, those trees are likely never going to go away unless there's a fire or some other sort of disaster. So that's also something that really helps out. But like I said, there's lots of areas to plant. There's a lot of vacant spots in the right of way that we'd love to get filled. And the other good news is that we are starting to get some money from City Council to do that, which is excellent. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about that because that kind of gets into, where do we go from here? But I want to show you also another way that we can look at things, and I'm going to scale out to the entire city. This is where it gets a little more complex, but just bear with me here. So you're going to see all the color disappear from this map. So I'm going to set all of my filters to 0, or basically to no priority. So let's say if we were just curious about what are the hottest parts of town, right? One of our things that we want to combat here is the urban heat island effect. So I can look at this slider that says average temperature, and now I can slide this over and it's showing me where the high priority places are. Okay. And you can see our legend is over here on the right. The red areas are going to be our highest priorities, essentially our hottest parts of town. And so you can see the, let's see, so I'm going to get this, so it'll only filter by census block groups, which is a little bit unfortunate, but the Whitaker is essentially in this area. I mean, you can see the northern boundary here, of course, of the river, and it's in this area here. Yes, that's absolutely right. So that's in here. Actually, the hottest part of town is just adjacent to the west. It's actually this Highway 99 corridor here. We also have quite a few hot spots in West Eugene, and then a little bit over here on the east side of town. There's a couple reasons for this. There's a lot of industrial area over here. There's also a lot of new subdivisions, and though some of those subdivisions have good tree stocking levels, they're well planted with trees. Those trees are still very small. So if the only criteria we were looking at was heat, well, then it makes sense that even though there are a lot of trees out here, and some of these areas, the canopy coverage is actually increasing, they're still very hot because those trees aren't providing the shade. Do we have any questions so far? I don't want to get going too fast for folks here.
I just wanted to say welcome to our neighbor, Councilmember Claire Siret. Councilmember, welcome. Eric, one of our talented city employees, is just giving us kind of a blow-by-blow of tree plotter, a tree canopy tool, and sharing with us some of the analysis for mitigating heat island effect that tree canopy can play, but also some of the different layers of data that can be shown through tree plotter.
Hello, Councilor Surratt, good to see you. Yeah, so we can go through a number of these filters here. You can see there's median household income, people of color, people of poverty, vulnerable populations, unemployment, health index. There's all sorts of things that we can filter here, and we can of course lay those over top of each other. The one that I really want to point out though is this tree equity score on top here, and this is it's a tool that was put together by American Forest, which is a nonprofit organization that focuses heavily on both urban and traditional forestry here in the States. And they've developed this tree equity score. And so when we slide this over and look, the redder the areas, the least equitably the canopy cover is distributed, but it's also, it factors in proximity to green space. It factors in a lot of socioeconomic data, and I can share some of that from American Forest. I don't have it at the moment, but I'm happy to send that out in an email after the fact. They can break that down, but you can really see, you know, there's lots of trees, lots of kind of green space in South Eugene, somewhat in the middle here. But again, these red areas are where we really want to start focusing our priorities. Really, when we have resources to plant trees, this is one area that we know we need to get more aggressive when it comes to tree planting, and also preserve some of the trees that are already there. You know, we're not going to put, while we may still invest a lot of resources into preserving trees in the south part of town, we're certainly not going to put a lot of resources planting there. That's those areas have in some cases up to about 60% canopy cover, compared to some areas out here that may only have 5%. It's a huge disparity, and we want to try to correct that. That's really important to us. You know, effectively in this hot part of town, especially in the lower income areas, you know, we have some of the folks that have the least capability to pay things like utility bills, right? They're paying the most for the utility bills because they don't have that protection from the hot sun. So these are part of the reason that it's really important for us to really start looking at this. We can't just look at number of trees. We really have to look at how that canopy is distributed, and we want this whole map to be green. It's going to take some time, but I want to see this entire map be green. And when we start looking at exceptions, I don't want them to be just the industrial areas. I'd like to, you know, we have some functional wetlands that should never have trees, right? That's what they're designed to do. Those are areas that we would never plant, but I really want to see this map a lot more green than red. So that's what we're working towards. Go ahead, Ian.
We just have a quick request from the group, is it possible to overlay the names of the neighborhoods on top of the coloration so we can get a deeper sense of just which areas have more tree cover than others?
Unfortunately, in this, so there's kind of three modules here. There's the view module, the plan module, and the grow module. And unfortunately, we're limited to census block groups for this particular one. But if we kind of, I'm just going to scroll back and forth here. So this is the neighborhood view. Okay. If you take a look at that, I'm just going to flip back and forth, and you can kind of see roughly those outlines. I'll go just a couple more times. That went back to census block groups. Yeah, so, and again, the Whitaker, of course, would be right here. And so when we scroll over to this, you can see there's still a lot of red and a lot of orange in the Whitaker area, and we want to work to correct that, absolutely. So, any questions so far on this? Or any other questions, I should say? Go ahead, Jennifer.
Yes, thank you for being here, Eric. What are things that, of all things, because that was my question, how demarcation of what areas you're speaking to? It's confusing. You know it, but I don't know it. And also, are you going to put any substantial trees in with a decent canopy instead of the dinky little trees that we see replanted after you take down substantial trees? I don't get it. They look like they're struggling. They're like in trouble. And what do they bring?
I'm really glad you brought that up. That's actually a very important topic that people ask a lot about, and we're actually hoping to plant trees. So traditionally, we've always strived to plant trees that were about 2 inches in diameter. That's spelled out in code, and that's kind of an average size for a landscape tree. But we also know that a smaller tree will actually establish much quicker. There have been plenty of experiments and research that has happened where they take trees. So a larger tree is going to take longer to establish once it's transplanted. There's a higher level of shock, and then there's a much higher level of aftercare. And if that aftercare isn't good, then of course you're going to have attrition, right? So when you think about a seedling, right, this is a very tiny little plant that just kind of gets right through the soil. And you see these seedlings that are just putting on a tremendous amount of growth. I mean, if you've seen like a Douglas fir that has just popped up somewhere in your yard, it's not uncommon that they're growing a foot or 2 feet a year. Now, we don't want to plant trees that are that small, but what we do want to plant are whips that are maybe 1 inch in diameter, and they may have some branching, but they're not going to be these big substantial trees. And we've found that in the long run, those trees will actually establish quicker and get bigger and develop a better root system than their larger counterparts. The other thing is the cost and the carbon footprint of producing those larger trees is far more significant. So we can save money, we can save on our carbon footprint and establish these trees quicker and easier by going with slightly smaller stock. And it seems counterintuitive, you know, but there's research out there that points us in that direction.
Okay, but I personally, I haven't seen anything that makes me go, wow, oh my God, good job. You know, and it had a lot to do with when they had that bus system put in and they took out so many trees. I haven't been wowed in one iota. So it's hard for me to buy what you're saying because I haven't seen it actually happen. And so it sounds good on paper, but in reality, it doesn't seem to be the case. Sorry.
No. Oh, no. I'm very glad you brought it up. And, you know, speaking very specifically to the EMX project, that was, let me just say this way, it wasn't city crews that planted those trees. It wasn't city crews that were responsible for the aftercare. Those were through a contractor, and they didn't perform as well, right? We take a little bit more care of our trees than most contractors out there. And so there was a lot of tree loss in that stretch. I mean, it's, you know, in some ways hard to see. You know, you went from entire street covered by canopy to now a lot of small trees, and then those trees actually didn't do very well. So that was frustrating for us too. I certainly understand. I can certainly point you to some areas where we've done significant planting efforts, and certainly take a look and see what you think. I'd be interested to see what you have to say. But I'd be happy to share some of those locations with you. I'm happy to email perhaps through Ian if that's okay.
That sounds great to me, and we'd love to share those not only with Jen, but also share those with community members too, because I think that's the way that we can get a really vibrant discussion going about how we might be able to work better together with you. And as home, I think of the most HODADs per capita out of any neighborhood in Eugene. I think we probably have some practiced hands at tree planting. So we actually have a couple of other questions. And thanks so much for pausing, Eric. I know that there's a lot more rich content, and I'm a super visual person, so I love the color map too. We've got comments from Stephen, Claire, and Margaret in that order. And so I will pass it on to Stephen first. Stephen?
Thank you, Eric. Thank you for this presentation. I had a question about maintenance of trees that are planted. I attended a presentation similar to this concerning Portland a couple of months ago. And the guy during the presentation explained that one of the problems with planting in some of the red areas was people did not want to commit to have to maintain the trees that might be planted in their planter strip. If somebody wants to have trees planted in the planter strip between the sidewalk and the street outside the front of their house, who is responsible for the maintenance of the trees going ahead, the maintenance and the liability of the trees going forward?
Thank you for asking. So that's a great question. So trees that are in the right of way, so that strip there, say between, most traditionally between the sidewalk and the street, with trees planted all along there, those are all maintained by the city. So it's a big fundamental difference between us and Portland. So imagine this: we want to go into neighborhoods and plant trees, and these neighborhoods are not wealthy neighborhoods. These are lower income neighborhoods. It's very hard to sell a tree to somebody who doesn't have a lot of money when you're telling them that they have to take on the maintenance.
Yeah.
That's a really hard sell, and it's really hard to get folks to buy in. Portland is desperately trying to get to where we're at. I have a lot of colleagues in Portland, and they largely are what we would consider a permitting agency. And it's really frustrating because the adjacent homeowner owns not only the maintenance but the liability on those trees as well. And so our way of maintaining trees here is more expensive than Portland's, but the level of care is far higher. And so I'm very happy for what we have, and I'm very protective of that, because I think that's what makes things work for us. And we always encourage private investment as well. If folks want to plant their own tree, we can permit that. I mean, we know that there's a lot of planting spaces out there, and it's going to be hard for the city to afford to fill all of them. So we encourage that. If folks want to plant their own trees, we can certainly guide you to the perfect tree for your location. We're here as a resource. We can always work with you on that. So if you have a right-of-way spot in front of your house and there's a tree that you want there, we have a contract with Friends of Trees for very reduced price trees, or you can go to a nursery and buy your own. We have a street tree list that we want folks to use, because we put a lot of research into choosing those right trees for the right place. We think about things like minimizing sidewalk damage. We don't want to be putting sequoias in these little 5-foot wide planter strips, because people get very attached to them, and that's a very short-term solution with a high carbon footprint, and we try to avoid that.
Thank you for that excellent news. I'm glad I moved from Portland to Eugene.
All right.
Me too.
You've got one convert. I believe Claire was next, and then Margaret, and then Thea has a comment in the chat after Margaret. Claire?
Hi, Eric. Thanks for coming back to chat with all of us wild people. I hope this isn't too specific, but it's on my bike route home and then out into the world when I'm forced to leave the bike path. On Van Buren and West 2nd Avenue, I was just wondering if you might know what happened to those two trees.
So I believe one of them was a big leaf maple. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Yep. So we've been working with the homeowner for quite a few years. I can only speak to the big leaf maple. That's the only one that I'm aware of, but I can find an answer for the other two. The big leaf maple there, right in front of the Whitney residence. That was a really nice tree. Had a lot of character. We worked on that tree. I've been with the city now for about 10 years. I've worked on that tree 2 or 3 times to go through and do some weight reduction and some corrective pruning. And the homeowner there called us one day and said, "Uh-oh." She had a vested interest in preserving the tree as well. She called us and she goes, "Uh-oh, we've got a problem." There was the bark on the sidewalk side of the tree. It was very obvious that all of the heartwood had decayed behind it, but the bark had kind of created a shell. And I don't know if somebody went by and maybe kicked it or somebody bumped into it or what, but it exposed the entire tree. Was pretty well hollow. And it was, with big leaf maples, to be honest, I might have explained this last time and stop me if I did, but when you look at decay in a tree, think about a solid steel tube. Or a solid steel rod, excuse me. That's really strong. It has a lot of resistance this way. Now, a solid steel tube, even though it's largely hollow, by far, it has tremendous strength when you try to compress it this way, right? So big leaf maples are really good to work with. They have a very thick, dense shell wall. And so when they decay, we don't really get too worried until about 75% of the entire percentage of the heartwood is gone. Effectively a tube that only has that 25% of the shell left. And there are a lot of trees like that still standing, and I have very good confidence that those are safe trees. We've maintained them. This particular one, though, that cavity was all put to the side. So now think of that same steel tube and put that cavity on the side. You can see the compression this way. It just buckles very easily. I think that the tree stood for a really long time because it was very short in stature. It had been topped into the power lines, and we had done some reduction cuts, so it was kind of short and very squatty. And I think it just stood for a long time. It was really sad to see it go. The one nice thing about it, though, we worked with the homeowner to get another big leaf maple planted next to it, and that actually happened, oh boy, somewhere between 5 and 10 years ago. So there was already another tree effectively just growing. So it'll have plenty of sunlight now and it'll take right off. So we were very happy about that, for sure.
Awesome. Well, thanks for taking care of it during its healthy years, and thanks for the explanation.
Yeah, you bet. And I get very specific. I know a lot of the trees around town. So if you ever have very specific questions,
I figured.
I know. I've either worked in, climbed, or
Yeah.
have just been impressed by most of the trees in town. So.
And I have one dear memory with that specific tree. I was walking home and some guy was like, "Hey, you want to see my dog do a trick?" And he had like a border collie or something, and he snapped his fingers and the dog like ran up into that tree. And I was like, "Oh, okay." So,
That's great.
Good memories.
Mm-hmm.
Well, thanks for sharing that. And yeah, I almost feel like I need to quiz you now, Eric, if you can describe to me the trees at the corner of Whitaker intersections. But I'll leave the chauffenade for another time. Margaret, you had the next question, and then we have 2 in Zoom chat questions from you, from Dan and Thea respectively. Margaret?
Excellent.
First, I just want to say thanks for coming again. I appreciate your presentation. And I also appreciate and understand when you say you have to take the area into, you consider where the tree's going, how wide it is. Anyone that's walked down the Whitaker at nighttime through the sidewalks and taken any length of time knows where the spots are, where the tree roots are coming up and splitting the sidewalk in half. Which is happening a lot all around our neighborhood. And I'm sure I know it's unhealthy for me if I've been out and had a couple beers and I'm walking home. And I'm sure it's also, it's not great for the tree, the homeowner, or whatever. So I want to say thank you for that. And so to get back, just to clarify for myself, I understand, we want a canopy, and a canopy means we want something that's larger, that's over the top of us. So when you plant a tree, on average, how old is that tree that you plant? And how long does it take till it grows and becomes part of the canopy, when we can be wowed and be like, oh my gosh, there's so much shade outside?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's another great question. So, a lot of the trees that we're planting are probably somewhere in the 5 to 7 year old range. A lot of those trees are going to be, roughly 6 foot tall and 1 inch diameter, and they're going to have some sort of branching. And it really just depends on the species. Some species that have very heavy branching. Some species are lighter branched. They're all going to fill in time, though. Now, again, it really just depends on the species, but let's say a large canopy tree. So it goes into the planter strip that's at least 8 foot wide. You've got good soil, everything's a go, right? That tree is going to grow pretty quick. Let's say we just put a small big leaf maple in there. I've seen big leaf maple grow easily 2 to 3 feet a year, and they can do that for quite a few years. So effectively, a 20-year-old big leaf maple is casting a lot of shade. In fact, I can I'm gonna make myself a note to send a photo. There's a big leaf maple on the corner of, I can't think of the cross street, but I'm going to send you a photo of it. We planted it probably, it's been less than 10 years ago. I mean, I was here, I planted the tree, and it casts a lot of shade. I mean, we put it in a good spot. It's, you know, great alluvial soil like you see all through the Whitaker neighborhood. And it's really shocking to see how big that tree has gotten in probably 7 years, I would say. So I'm going to get a photo of that I'll
That's,
email
but
out.
you're planting young trees, right?
We
So
really,
what Anad said in the chat is that you're not planting the trees for us. You're planting them for our children and our grandchildren.
correct.
So, okay. That's,
and
yeah, I
then
just wanted to clarify that.
The other piece of that equation is, you know, we hopefully preserve the larger trees that we can. You know, that's been our biggest downfall in the past, is actually not valuing our large trees enough. You know, it's something that we need to get a lot better about, and that's just been a cultural shift that's happening, certainly in our program, that's happened over the last 10 years. So we've worked hard to save a lot of trees. I've spent a lot of time having some really difficult conversations with folks, and I'll be the first to admit there's probably a lot of folks in the community that don't appreciate me very much, because we have retained trees that you know, folks thought should be removed. And it's
Well, you know what? All of your hard work does not go unnoticed or unappreciated here. And we really, really are happy to have you and appreciate what you do. Thank you.
oh, absolutely.
Thanks so much for the conversation. I want to give you more time to kind of finish your presentation, particularly as we start to think about ways that we might work together. There was 2 comments in the Zoom chat, and then a follow-up question from Jen, and then we'll hand it right back to you. The comment from Thea was, can you talk a little bit more about Friends of Trees and the role that they play in partnership with the city? And then the comment from Dan is, do you have a link that can be included in the contact info in the Zoom chat for folks who might want to inquire regarding medium planting, maybe with Friends of Trees or with the city itself? So I combined both those 2 comments together.
Yes. So we work with Friends of Trees very heavily. We have it's a partnership, I guess, by the legal definition. We have a contract with Friends of Trees, but we like to refer to it as a partnership. So we provide a fair amount of money. So Friends of Trees plants about 285 trees for the city of Eugene, and our contract, we pay by far the lion's share of that. So essentially what happens, if you were to call Friends of Trees, the cost to have a tree planted, and they do like to have, of course, community involvement, that's part of their model, but the cost to have the tree planted is only about $40. And when you really start looking at it, that's actually less than the wholesale price of just going to a big wholesale nursery and buying the tree, right? You might be getting a 15-gallon tree for about $40. That's a really, really good price. And that's because the city is essentially subsidizing those trees. That's why they largely plant trees in the right of way, and those right of way trees are expensive, inexpensive. And so there's a couple modes by which we plant trees, and I'm only going to speak to Friends of Trees just because that's what the question was. And I can elaborate later at a different time if you'd like. But the big thing with Friends of Trees, they, as I said, we do subsidize them, but they're really geared for folks that want to have more say in the tree that gets planted, and maybe they even want to have some say in the establishment of the tree, right? So Friends of Trees, when you visit their website, it's very much like any sort of checkout that you would do for any sort of an online store, right? You kind of put in your criteria for your site, and they're going to give you a list of trees, and you get to choose from those trees. And then you'll be involved in the planting, and they do ask that the homeowner helps water the tree, right? So there is some buy-in from folks on this. The watering is actually the most expensive part of planting a tree, right? And I think we may have discussed that last time, but it increases the time it increases the cost of planting about 4 times to actually water that tree through establishment. It's really expensive. So that's also part of it. Folks that are willing to water those trees and kind of nurture those trees and take care of those trees, it's a really good setup. Now, sometimes we get into places where there's really not an adjacent homeowner, and that's not a good model for Friends of Trees because they don't have the watering capacity, and that's where it is probably more appropriate for the city to plant trees because we do have the capacity to do that. And yeah, I can absolutely add. I can put my email and I can do the Friends of Trees email. I'll drop that in the chat after our conversation, but I'll do it before I hop off. Make myself a note. Excellent. Any other questions?
Yeah, just a quick follow up from Dan's question. Is there a link you can hop onto for the city when you have a median and you want the city to come to plant a tree at the median?
Absolutely. So what we've been asking folks to do is go to the City of Eugene website, and pretty much any page under the Public Works website, you'll see submit a request for service. And if folks can, it's a very easy place to just go online. If you have internet access, it's very user friendly. You can put in your site, you'll have your contact information, and just say, hey, we want trees, and then we can come out and we'll contact you on kind of the best way to get a tree into your spot, whether that's through the city, through a planting permit, or through Friends of Trees. We'll help folks get through all that. And there's also the our general number. I'll drop it in the chat, but it's the 682-4800 number. It's another way that if you don't have computer access, or if you'd rather just talk to a human being, you can always call that number and just talk to somebody, and they'll work you through it.
Thanks so much. Sorry, it took me a second there to unmute because I was sharing with Dan the gateway to 1,000 trees. And with that, I will pass it on to Jen for our final comment before we pass it back to you, Eric. Jen?
Thank you again, Eric, for coming back. I like that you have some compassion for trees. It makes such a huge difference to speak with, someone who's not connected, but you have it. So I live because Whitaker, a lot of the streets they don't have that area where I don't know what it's called, but where you can plant things. The streets the sidewalks sometimes just drop off. But in my tiny little front and backyard, I have at least 7 trees, and I just established a peach tree and a plum tree. And when I do that, I know that that's like I become a family member. And so I have to nurture it and take care of it because they give back. And so I'm going to go back to the trees that were put in that were not fruitful and well buried and that didn't survive when that system of putting in that bus situation came in. Who is responsible for addressing that part? Because it's just like they just die. And I don't understand the maintenance and the how can they get away with that?
Well, basically what happens in a case like that is we don't do the work, right? So contractors will come in on a big project like that, and let's say they're redoing the pavement of the road, stuff like that. It's very rarely would that be a city crew for really big projects because we just don't have that much staffing. So a lot of times contractors come in, contracts are written for everything that happens, and tree planting is one of those. I don't mean this to I don't want this to come across the wrong way, but we put a lot of time into procurement. We get really high quality trees from high quality nurseries, and we have a much higher degree of aftercare than is frankly standard for most municipalities. And it's the follow-up care for watering trees in the private industry right now. It's frankly a lot of businesses don't want to do it because it's not that profitable. Now, when we plant trees in these areas, they have a 3-year warranty. Those they did have a crew that came through and watered them, but I can't speak to the quality of the trees. I didn't get a chance to look at the roots. I didn't address that. And I know that their watering regimen was not as good as what we do. It wasn't as frequent as what we do for our city trees. So I'm not trying to say that it's not that it was a bad contractor. The contract was just written to different specs. And I think unfortunately the folks that wrote that contract didn't really know what those trees needed, right? And we do. We've done this for a long time. So there was kind of a high attrition rate, but I also want to say, that's a hard spot to establish trees, right? So a lot of the trees, we did lose a fair amount to things like vandalism. And, there are some places along there where, you've got a concrete sidewalk and a building right next to it, and that generates a lot of reflected heat. And so you really have to be on top of watering those trees and getting them established. Those are not trees that, they're going to take kind of more than the average tree needs because of their microclimate or their little microenvironment. And so, tree planting and tree establishment is something that we really take seriously. We have less than a 1% mortality rate. And for a municipality, there's not a lot out there that can share those same numbers. Let's just say that. We have a really good program for watering trees. We have city crews that do it. We also have a contractor that waters trees for us. In fact, it's amazing. We employ somebody to water trees full time, and in some years we have to have split shifts. So it's essentially we're watering from like 7 in the morning till 9 o'clock at night, pretty much every day. We water about 1,000 trees a year, every year. So it's a lot.
Wow.
And those get watered, just so you know, once a week for 3 years during the summer months. Each one of them gets 15 gallons of water while we're there, and another 15 gallons that goes into a water bag. You've probably seen those. They're like a little donut around the base of the tree, and that slow releases the water over the course of a few days. So, it's expensive to get a tree in the ground, but once you've got it there, we want to make sure that they're watered, right? It's just not a good look to be losing a lot of trees. Doesn't make us feel good, and certainly the public doesn't like it, right? So we want to be successful. And a lot of folks they don't understand what it takes to really establish a tree.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Eric. And I feel like this is a great segue into how can we best work together? It seems like Friends of Trees is probably a good avenue with the established partnership and the good interface between the city and community-based organizations and even individuals. Because I went on their website and it was like, hey, buy a tree from us, plant it in your front yard. And I don't think it would be best to have, I'll pick on myself, Ian buy a bunch of trees and then kind of like walk around Eugene after everything you just said, because it takes a lot of time and infrastructure and intention. But it seems like there's a lot of potential opportunities that exist for us to be able to work together. And now Councilmember Syrad's going to correct me and tell me, yes, Ian, you need to just walk around Eugene and plant trees willy-nilly. So I'll pass it on to Councilmember Syrad.
No, not at all. I was going to say Friends of Trees is very well set up to intersect with neighborhood associations. They do it all the time, and use neighborhood associations as a means to solicit folks to come out and do, let's plant a bunch of trees in this one particular area or in the park or whatever has been designated. And they do that in coordination, with Eric's department. But yeah, I think some kind of coordination with them is ideal, and they would be super excited to work with Whitaker Community Council. I speak for them. No, I feel confident with that.
So I understand now that Councilmember Syrad is the Lorax of our meeting. She speaks for the trees. But in all seriousness, Eric, I got Margaret, so at least I got one person laughing. Eric, what should we be thinking about when we're thinking of the where, right? Because to me, it seems like there's a lot of, just from the color coding, there's a disproportionate burden placed on certain areas. So is there a way we can follow the city's guidance on parts of the Whitaker specifically that need more trees than others? And are there some places top of mind, or even kind of looking at the map of like, yeah, these houses or this park or this street are in desperate need more so than other areas?
Yeah, again, great question. So a couple things I want to touch on here. So we did recently get some additional money to plant trees, which is awesome. Right. And so part of the reason that's happened, so thank you very much, Councilor Smith. I know you were really advocating for that, so I want to thank you very much. That would go a long ways, and it'll help us start to change this map, from red to green. But so we're kind of halfway through the planting season right now, so we're kind of scrambling right now in a good way, to to get these spots identified. And the way that we've done that is to actually look at some areas that we had planned on planting trees in the past and it didn't work out. So one of those areas is of course Highway 99 from basically from Roosevelt all the way up to Barger. Again, that's not quite in the Whitaker, but it's the hottest part of town and it's just to the west of it. So that's a spot that we want to get planted. One spot that we did identify in the Whitaker that we'd like to try to get planted this year is actually along the entrance to the Rose Garden. So there's the little stretch of right away, I believe it used to be ODOT right away, that is just on the east side of Jefferson. And we've been talking about one of the requests that we get a lot of times is to have fruit trees in the right of way. And we don't really like, you know, I'm just gonna like let the secret out. We don't really like fruit trees in the right of way for a lot of reasons, but that doesn't mean we don't like fruit trees, and we certainly understand the need for them. And we were looking at that piece of right of way. It's plenty wide enough that we could actually do a small edible garden and maybe design it with a little pathway through it, a little bark mulch pathway. But that's an area that we had identified in the past that we wanted to do something with. And so that's something we're going to hopefully be able to get planted this year. We'll certainly be reaching out to folks to see, you know, what are the varieties and everything that folks like, because that's actually not our specialty at all. So that's a project that we're hoping to get completed by the end of our planting season, which will be April. And if not, then we'll put that on the ticket again for when we start planting again in the fall, which would be October. But more specifically, Ian, to get back to your question, how can we team up? So we absolutely want to involve Friends of Trees. We'll absolutely want to involve city staff. And as everybody knows, we've gone through, we just pruned all the trees in the Whitaker. That was a huge, you don't understand how big that was for us. Nobody on this meeting probably remembers the last time we did that, because I don't think we've ever done that before. So that's awesome. You don't understand how big of a thing that was for us. And folks were very, you know, large. I mean, we had a few folks that weren't like, you know, thrilled about what we were doing, but largely it was well received and we made a lot of great contacts. And so sometimes when we go into these neighborhoods where we've just never been or barely been, it's always, you know, it's always good to just kind of meet these folks and, hey, this is what we do. So we make all these great connections. Now, part of that process was to inventory all the trees in the Whitaker, which we did. So we pruned 887 trees in the Whitaker. We removed 29 trees, which actually sounds like a lot. Most of those trees were basically dead or very close to it. They were on, you know, death's doorstep for sure. And we have record for that. So if anybody wants to see those, I'm always happy to share that. I really, really do appreciate transparency and always happy to have that conversation. What we did not inventory in this process, though, were all of the available planting sites. And, you know, we have, again, to try to minimize conflict with things like streetlights and sidewalks, we have criteria for not only what types of trees can be planted, but what's the appropriate spacing. And we typically, that's very standard, right? If we don't have the resources to do tree planting, it's really not worth our time to go through and identify all the planting sites when we do our sweeps, because it's a lot of extra work. It actually, in some neighborhoods, there's more planting sites than there are actually trees, sadly enough. And so identifying all those sites, we just didn't put the time into it. And now we need to go back and find all those. So one of the things that we did in JWN a few years ago was to team up with the neighborhood to actually do a volunteer tree inventory. And I think we could do something very similar, but rather than, because the tree inventory data is all up to date, we could actually do a volunteer planting site inventory. And I think that'd be awesome, because we could get folks to help. It would speed it up. And then people can also kind of get a glimpse into like, what are we looking at? What are the criteria? You know, we have, you know, I hate to sound like a bureaucrat, but we have code standards for where we can plant trees. And it may not be obvious to everybody. And so it's really obvious to us, and it makes sense because it's in code, but it's still kind of esoteric information that a lot of the public doesn't have, because frankly, it's really dry to read through code. I wouldn't recommend it. So that's where we can help. That's something I would really like to explore, and that's something that would be great to do during the summer months, with the idea of doing a big planting in the Whitaker next fall. So we'll you know, have some more tree planting funds into the next fiscal year. And, you know, even if we don't spend all the funding this year, you know, again, we're kind of halfway through the planting season already, we can roll those funds over and make that happen. So you know, there should be some availability to get quite a few trees planted in that area. And, you know, we can kind of break it up, you know, for folks that want to have a little bit more say or whatnot, we can give options for folks. If folks absolutely don't want to be interested in the watering, or they don't want to be interested in the planting of the tree, then maybe those are sites that are better for the city of Eugene to pick up. And for folks that want to have some say in the tree, that's something that we can work with too, through Friends of Trees. And we have some other options too. We've looked at things like, making the trees free, right? Working through Friends of Trees to pick up the additional subsidy, or there's lots of things that we're talking about right now. We're in the, I don't want to like commit to anything, but there's lots of options on the table, and we're talking with Friends of Trees very regularly. And at some point we'll want to start, bringing folks from the Whitaker into that conversation to kind of plan it a little bit better. So that's what we're looking at.
Well, that sounds amazing. And you've got Jen's seal of approval. I saw her clapping enthusiastically. And it certainly sounds like a great opportunity for us to be able to roll up our sleeves and find another way to be able to work together and leverage some of our resources too. I know Oregon Health Authority right now is looking at community health and health equity in the built environment, and in the context of how can we create more resilient communities. And it certainly seems that tree canopy, reducing the disproportionate heat island effect that exists in marginalized communities and lower income communities, certainly seems like one way to do that. So I love the idea of a tree inventory in the summer for a big planting in the fall. What is this is, I guess, one of our last things before we move on to our next speaker. What, in the best case scenario, if we had a really big planting in the fall, how many trees would that be? Because it seems like
maybe a couple hundred at least, maybe a few hundred. I mean, just we have a very small crew, and just our small crew, I think we've planted close to 400 trees already. And we planted about that last year. That doesn't count trees that are planted by FOT, by our contractors in new subdivisions. That's just our little crew. And I want to give you an example. When I started up this crew, there was I had a coworker on the crew who had been on the crew for 8 years and never planted a single tree. And that really, I just wasn't happy about that. I'll just say that. I wasn't really happy about that. And it's like, what are we doing here? Why is urban forestry not planting trees? You can't be what I would consider like a full spectrum arborist, or the word that we use for it around the shop, we call it a seed to snag arborist, right? So from propagation all the way down to creation of dead snags at the end of a tree's life. We want to be able to do everything in between. And so it really bothered me. So we, once I get into a position where I can start having a little bit more influence, we moved to having our crews plant a lot more trees. So we have the capacity to do it. Friends of Trees has a lot of capacity. And we know that we have a lot of folks that would be willing to volunteer in the Whitaker. And I think we can even probably help with some outside investment too. I think there are people in the community who want to donate, and people in the community who want to see this happen. And it's absolutely going to take some private investment. I mean, it's always great to have additional cash, but it's not an endless supply, right? So it's going to take a little bit of input from everybody to make this happen. But I'm confident we can do that. I mean, I don't want to sound too hopeful, but I really feel like we're hitting like this golden era of urban forestry in Eugene. I really do, because I think that a lot of things are lining up in a very uncanny way. And it just seems like we're at a spot. We're at a decision point with Eugene. We've got a pretty good urban forest. I mean, it bugs me, right? I came from close to Cincinnati, Ohio. I grew up just outside of Cincinnati. Cincinnati, Ohio has a higher canopy rate than Eugene. Higher canopy percentage than Eugene, and that blows my mind, because I've spent a lot of time in Cincinnati, and there's not it's not a place that would strike you as having a huge amount of trees, right? New York City actually has a slightly higher canopy percentage than Eugene. I mean, these are things that are hard to really comprehend, but that's the reality of the situation, and we want to fix that.
Well, thank you so much, Eric. What a high note to end on, and how we can work together to continue this golden era in urban forestry. Just want to say thanks again for all of the information that you shared. We're going to share your information on Facebook afterwards so that folks can watch the meeting, but also blow up that public service request form to be able to plant more trees on their median. And we'll certainly be in touch with this big idea of a volunteer planting site inventory in the summer for a big planting in the fall of maybe 200 to 400 trees. So thanks again so much. And we'll certainly reach back out to you. And if there's anything you want to share please share it to the Whitaker Community Council at gmail.com email address, and I'll share it with our community members who are here and those community members who aren't here through social media as well. And with that, I wanted to pass it on to Ashley. Ashley, you'll have to forgive me. Mispronouncing people's last names is a great pastime of mine. So I believe it's Ashley Cisna with the Eugene Water and Electric Board, EWEB for the uninitiated. And we're really lucky to have you tonight to talk about the Pledge to Prepare program. So really thrilled to be able to learn more. For those of you who haven't done it, EWEB for many years has been doing Pledge to Prepare, where you can pledge to prepare yourself and your loved ones to be more resilient to disasters that might happen over the course of 12 months. So it's a really great program, and super excited to learn more about what's new for 2022 and what the program is. So Ashley, did I even get close for either Pledge to Prepare or your last name, or am I off the mark on both?
You got both of them perfect, so way to go. I do occasionally get some weird ones with my last name. I was going to try to share my screen really fast so I can show my brief presentation. Of course, it doesn't. I have too many windows open. So let me. You also tell people all about Pledge to Prepare. I don't even need to anymore. All right. Where is my presentation? All right. Trying to present. Doesn't like me. So we'll just do it on this one. I won't even use my presentation. It's fine. So yeah, I'm Ashley. I'm from EWEB, as Ian already said. I'm here to talk to you a little bit about Pledge to Prepare. He gave a great brief overview. It's 12 months where we break down things you need to do to get to be 2 weeks ready in case of a natural disaster or potentially human-caused one. The Oregon Department of Emergency Management recommends that everybody gets ready 2 weeks ready. That's the minimum that they think that we would be required to be on our own until infrastructure can be back up after something like the big one, the big earthquake that could potentially will happen at some point. So what does 2 weeks ready look like? The basics that everybody probably knows. It's going to be food, water, fuel. So in Pledge Prepare, we run down, we start you out, get your 3 days worth first. That's the very first step. 3 days worth of water, 3 days worth of food, and then fuel. And then as we go on, we add additional things like after a couple of days, where are you going to go to the bathroom? It's not a glamorous topic, but you definitely need to talk about it if you are going to be without certain services after a period of time. How to prepare your home for safety. We want to make sure that all household members know how to shut off your utilities. Within reason, you probably aren't going to train your 5-year-old to do it. But after a disaster like an earthquake, one of the biggest dangers is a fire because electric spark can ignite from natural gas leaks. So turning those off can help you avoid further disaster to your home. We also talk about securing your water heater and other major appliances. So again, in the event of an earthquake, you aren't putting yourself in further danger. Other things that we talk about are first aid, tools and hardware to keep on hand. How are you going to charge like phones or emergency radios and stuff? Making car kits. How are you going to prepare to get your kids from school? Who's going to pick them up? Creating that family emergency plan, including everybody, talking to neighbors and kind of coming with a community plan. Also taking care of important documents and I don't want to say stockpiling money, but having some cash on hand. So in the event that you need it, don't have access to your credit cards or debit cards, you have something to purchase anything that's necessary. So like I said, we break it into 12 months. Each month we do kind of have a different topic. We just build on each other. I was going to show a sample of the supply list, but since you can't see my presentation, I guess I won't do that. And then each month, to kind of keep people engaged, we do a monthly raffle. If you complete your Supplies, just snap a picture. You can email it to us at follow@eweb.org. You can put it on our Instagram or our Facebook. That automatically gets you entered into a drawing. This month we are giving away a water block, and that can hold about 5 gallons of water. So you have 5 gallons, we recommend a gallon a day per person. So that is, thank you. And that's an example of the January list. So yeah, once you send us a picture, you're entered in that drawing. At the end of the year, we'll do a drawing for a small generator. So each photo that you submit gets you into the drawing throughout the year. Super easy to join. Just visit eweb.org/pledge and you can just enter your email into the form and you'll immediately get the first supply list. And after that, each month you'll just get it around the first of the month. Just complete your task, submit your photo, and you're done for the month. And that's all I've got. Any questions? Like I went really fast, but.
I definitely have one. So I've done it in the past, and yeah, definitely learned a lot. Primarily how unprepared I was, and especially to deal with things like human waste, and also making sure that my water heater was bolted into the wall. It can be pretty intimidating to start. And I know that a lot of our neighbors don't have the resources always to even make it through like a single month, not even through an emergency. And I'm wondering what opportunities might exist for us to be able to work together, where we might be able to get grant funding for us to subsidize some supplies, so folks can start to think about being proactively preparing, because a lot of folks in our community are just kind of reacting and just trying to make it through, especially since the pandemic has been especially hard on a lot of the folks who live here.
Yeah, that's a great question. I know that's something that I definitely thought about, just for myself personally, trying to get 2 weeks worth of food ready. That's a big expense, or like all the additional things. So I'm definitely trying to come up with ways to do it on a budget. But talking to different people about grant money for that's a great idea that we haven't really talked about. I'm on the communications team, so I can definitely bring that up to other people within eWeb to see if there's any resources that we have available, and I can share those with you when I know.
Sounds great. And we're pursuing some resources too through Oregon Health Authority. So we might reach out to you saying, hey, this looks like an opportunity. Like if we were the ones who got the funding and could be able to work with y'all to make sure that we were purchasing the right things. So we didn't buy, 300 can openers from Canada that's specifically for Canadian cans. So yeah, I just wanted to make sure that we had a good opportunity to do that. Thanks.
Yeah, that'd be great. Yeah, and I know that I'm trying to reach out to Buy Mart and Jerry's to try to get some local businesses to have lists of items that they have in stock that people can buy. Because I know I definitely prefer that people spend their money here in town than sending it off to Amazon or Walmart or something.
Great. Does anyone else have questions or comments for Ashley? Or has anyone done the Pledge to Prepare over the course of their time here in Eugene and wants to share their experience with the rest of us? I don't yet have the power of a college professor with those elbow things, so I can't call on people just yet, but I'm working towards it.
All right. Well, thank you so much, everybody. I'm so glad I could be here tonight.
Yeah, thank you so much, Ashley. We really appreciate you. And are there any materials that you think we should circulate with a group? I shared that image that you emailed to me earlier.
Yeah, I think just, and I can send that to you every month if you want. I know you already do it or you've done it in the past. They are all available on our website as well. Again, at the eweb.org/pledge. And I can put that link in the chat as well. But I can email you those supply lists each month if you want to share those with your members.
That sounds fantastic. Yeah, thanks so much, Ashley.
Great, thank you.
So we've got Will O'Hearn up next. Meg Schaefer just joined, which may be a pseudonym for Will. Will, did you just join us under the name Meg Schaefer, or Meg, are you joining us and are you not Will?
I just joined you from another meeting.
Oh,
Thank
well,
you.
welcome, Meg.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course. So we've got about 10 more minutes before Will joins, and I wanted to not put you on the spot, Councilmember Syret, but I was just wondering if we could share with you some of the work that we're doing. I know that you've been connecting with Thea around our housed and unhoused neighbors and mitigating some of the community impacts from some of our unhoused neighbors who have been transitioning out from Washington Jefferson Park. I know that Thea earlier, when you weren't here, was sharing her experience of working with business owners to make sure that we could mitigate some of the impacts from businesses that have been disproportionately kind of working through some of the impacts of unhoused neighbors who weren't being super great neighbors. So just wanted to pass it to Thea, because I know that she was saying that she was going to reach out to you in just a little bit, but since you're here right now, I thought we might use our time in that way. So Thea, I wanted to pass it on to you so you could share a little bit more and repeat some of the work that you've been doing in the community. And I know that you and the council member have connected via email as well.
Well, Councilmember Surratt and I already have a meeting scheduled for Saturday. And so I don't want to put her on the spot right now, but I do, if anyone has any suggestions, we really need to think about ways to weather, because the overflow is impacting us all. And Councilmember Surratt knows that very well, because she has a whole group living outside her, down the street from her right now, as well as what's happening on Van Buren and in front of Oakshire and in El Maiden and Fillmore. I had a long talk with Jeff Althouse today as well. And I am reaching back out to the railroad, and I'm working on, I guess should tell everyone, as I'm working with our one single railroad police officer. He does from Canada to California, and he is working on getting that cleaned up between Van Buren and Washington Jefferson, that section of railroad cleaned up. And I will be reaching out to him to get EPD, St. Vinny's, Public Works, and there's someone else in that list. I have to look at it, but they're all going to coordinate together to get cleaned up. So I'm trying to get everyone on the same page. It's kind of like herding cats. And so it's getting everyone, we need to work on getting the same language. We're all speaking different languages right now, and we all have different terms and we all have different rules. So that'll give you a heads up for Saturday, Claire. So, and if there are questions that people have or ideas they have, I really like the idea of getting Friends and Trees involved and getting some things planted in some of our right-of-ways. I think it'll improve our canopy. It'll make our neighborhood nice. It will give us nice shady walks. And if they really are interested in doing that fruit garden along the entrance to the rose garden, that would be amazing. So those are some good solutions. Are there other people that have ideas out there? Maybe a tree in the triangle too, even though it would obstruct a view right there by Red Barn.
Yeah, what I was thinking about is that there's a new grant that's from Oregon Health Authority that's ending on the 31st. So our board of directors meeting is on the 31st, or excuse me, next week on the 19th. And for those of you who missed the beginning, the Whitaker Community Council also serves as a nonprofit organization, a 501c3, in addition to being a neighborhood association. And this sounds like something that Oregon Health Authority might be interested in funding. This idea that health equity and community health is something that can involve resilience as well, and promoting that through maybe a couple of different things, whether it's the pledge to prepare and subsidizing people preparing for disaster in the neighborhood so they don't have to buy supplies themselves, to giving people free trees, or giving people a free tree if they participate in this space inventory that Eric talked about a little bit before. So those are two things that sound real interesting ways to be able to work together to be able to advance not just health equity, but also make our neighborhood more livable too. And speaking about neighborhood livability, Will just joined us, so I'll put him on the spot in a second. But has anyone seen yard signs around the neighborhood with vaccine confidence messaging on it yet? Okay, we got a couple of hands up, but I wanted to share this with folks. These are a couple of yard signs that are up in the community right now. We received some funding from Lane County Public Health. And so we've given stipends to Whitaker-based artists. They designed these yard signs, and then we in turn have printed them, and we're distributing them through our wellness clinics, which happen once a month on the second Sunday of the month at the Eugene Mission. So you can get free COVID testing, free COVID vaccines, free menstrual supplies from our partners at Eugene Bleeds, as well as food boxes and gift card incentives to Whitaker businesses if you're getting your first shot. And in addition to that, now we're passing out these yard signs that increase vaccine confidence. This is one, Todos Juntos contra COVID, with a bunch of ants showing teamwork. This one's pretty solid. These next two, I'm just going to skip through really quickly because we're not going to share just yet, but we're excited to share that next month. Here's Dorothy Siemens, a local artist who does a lot of work with the Whitaker Community Market. This one's in front of my house at 5th and Almaden if you drive by. And then this is one of my favorites too. Don't miss out, vaccinate. This features loads of Whitaker community members, and it's designed by a former Whitaker-based artist member of the Whitaker Community Art Team, Audrey Magpie Scully, and they, I think, did a crackerjack job. Plus it showcases a ton of people that you might know, love, and see regularly. Travis Kerr is there, Wade Love, you can't miss him in his rainbow poncho with his little spinner hat in the upper left-hand corner, and then Johnny with that trademark middle finger up. So if you haven't gotten your yard sign yet and you're feeling a deep fear of missing out, don't fret. We have loads of yard signs left for you. All you need to do is come to one of our wellness clinics on the second Sunday of the month and show your vaccine card to Doriandra or any of our wonderful volunteers, and we can get you a yard sign. So Will, we were just chit-chatting about some of our work in the community. We've been lucky enough to hear from some great speakers tonight, from Ashley at eWeb talking about Pledge to Prepare, to one of your colleagues at the city, Eric, an urban forestry supervisor, talking about forest canopy. And we're also super lucky to have you. You reached out and wanted to initiate a conversation about how to be able to have more access to library services for folks in the Whitaker. I think that you've got some pretty fierce competition. I just want to be honest with you, Will. I don't know if you've heard about the Whitaker Free Library, which exists. It's mobile. It exists in multiple places. You've got a thumbs up, so you embrace competition. But yeah, we're a great lover of books here in the Whitaker, and so super excited for the conversation to learn more about the work that you do and about the services at the library system and how we can get more services to folks at the Whitaker.
Thanks, Ian. Appreciate that. I think when your goal is to make sure Eugene's a literate community, we welcome everyone who wants to help chip in for that cause, whether they're part of the library or not. That's irrelevant. We love the idea of having them, and I think they're lots of fun too. So that's a great cause. We appreciate that. Competition, we're all for collaboration. So I'll go through, I know I have about 5 minutes here to talk to you guys a little bit today. Also, the big reason I'm here today, I'm going to tell you a few things that we've done during the pandemic. And maybe some services y'all don't know about. I'll go pretty quick through that. So I'll go a little rapid fire. I'll try to still, I'm pretty passionate about library services. So I will try my best not to go too fast. And then I would love to hear from you guys on how we can better serve your community. And just hear, feedback about the library in general. We're a community supported organization, and we want to be sure we're a community centered organization as well. So hear from all of you. I see a hand already. Jennifer?
Yes, thank you kindly, Will, for coming. I'm curious, I heard on NPR this whole thing about your e-books, which I would like to utilize. And I'm wondering if you can brush on that and what that means, because sometimes it's hard to go right now, especially, during this Omicron, to go into places and go for your books, which I miss doing so very much. And I'm wondering if that's if the way that and the books available on, is it ebooks? I don't know what it's properly called, but the availability of books that you're able to get now, because things are changing. I wish I had been able to listen to the whole thing Do you know what I'm talking about?
I know that there's ebooks out there. I'll cover a little bit of that. I'd love to cover part of that. I'd love to cover and talk a little bit more about that. So I'll make sure to cover that here down the road a little bit. I know there was a conversation about 2 years ago, maybe on KLCC. I don't know if this was recent about ebooks.
Yeah.
But yeah, I would love to touch on that. So if it's all right with y'all, I'd love to talk a little bit first about a couple things we're doing, and I'll make sure to touch on e-resources within there. Does that work, Jennifer?
Thank you very kindly. Yes.
Yeah, very good. So I'll just touch base and say that the library during the pandemic, a couple of things we did was that we never closed. We kept our virtual doors open. We always like to say that we opened for curbside in June 20 and then fully opened our building in August 2020 on the 24th, to be specific. We've thoughtfully brought back services, and we have all our hours and pretty much about 90% of our services back in there. There's a couple like our makerspace that is not pandemic conducive. It's very small. We really focus on access. That's been our battle cry. Our mantra this whole time is focus on access and giving people access. There's a number of things that we did for that. Don't have time to cover them all, but we definitely have, that's been kind of our driving force in serving our community as much as we can safely. Some of those include fine free for youth, cards for all students, accessibility of our building, bilingual communications. I love the signs that they're both in English and Spanish, so we're all on the same page here. Those are great, beautiful signs. We also focus on partnerships. That's really important to us, to be a part of the ecosystem of the community rather than stand alone and just doing our own thing. That's why I love, again, the competition, we call it, that actually works beautifully for us because we're all about working together to support the whole community and not just doing it all on our own. I think it's really important to be part of the ecosystem. That's why we really focus on partnerships with Lane County WorkSource, Museum of Natural and Cultural History, NAACP. We supported some book groups, and even our parks internally with bilingual story walks. We've also focused on the diversity of our collection. 30% of what we buy since 2020, I believe July we started that, has been from diverse or BIPOC authors, and 30% of what we highlighted in all our displays is also from diverse or BIPOC authors. So it's really important to us to make sure we're not only purchasing those materials, but making sure we signal boost those voices. It's important for people to have windows and mirrors, windows of what people can see into other people's worlds, and mirrors to reflect back their own experience. And so we had 1.6 million checkouts last year. It's about 1 million less than we typically have, but we're really proud of those numbers just because we worked really hard for them, and it's been a tough haul. We have about 110,000 cards in our community. About 2/3 of our community has a library card. And one other thing to note is that our library is a 4-star library award winner, which is essentially what I like to call the Oscars of the library. It means we're in the top 1% nationwide for excellence in cost-effective service delivery. That's a quote. And then I'll just tell you just a quick couple of resources to touch base on. Imagination Library, we actually expanded. The foundation holds that, manages that for us. We actually expanded that all of Lane County. We had our story time in person and online. We have our Fun of the Week. We've transferred activity kits to Fun of the Week. We gave almost 12,000 out of those last year, knowing we couldn't do quite as many programs as we normally did. So instead of doing the activity at the library, you can bring it home. We circulate 250 hotspots to our community and save 250 for vulnerable populations. We have a library of things, which is a fancy term in the library world for saying non-unique, non-traditional items. Things like sewing machines. Actually, our most popular is a digital slide converter. So if you want those 70s slides, those slides from Aruba, and you want to keep them forever digitally, that was our most popular item. We also have GoPros available for checkout, and some other things as well too. And we're looking to expand that. That's been very popular. A seed library, and then electronic resources. Jennifer, I'll make sure to touch on that. We have a bunch of different electronic resources. Library to go. So essentially everything that you can get from our library physically, that's not just ebooks, which you got it right. You can actually get e-audiobooks. That's where the format's really gone. A lot of audio has gone to a virtual, non-physical format, and Hoopla is a great chance for us with e-audiobooks. It actually has comics, music, movies, and more. Canopy we also have for movies. It's a really great service. And then, yeah, I'd love to touch base more on what you're looking for, but we have like lots and lots of books available on all those platforms, Jennifer. And it's just as simple as getting a library card. You can actually call us online and you can get an electronic use only library card, which gives you access to our electronic materials, but not our physical ones, because we want to make sure people feel comfortable wherever they're at, meeting them. So you may not feel comfortable coming to the library, but we still want you to make sure you're literate and having a chance to get all those trade books there. So you can call up, use it, and start using our virtual services. Not today, we're closed now, but tomorrow you can call in and get that rocking and rolling. So library would be happy to walk you through that process, and you can actually go on our website tonight, start looking for titles. You can see there's a little symbol underneath them that have like a little, it indicates an electronic resource. So if there's any questions more about those e-resources, I'd be happy to talk about those more. But yeah, definitely a lot of breadth and depth of resources there. I'd love to hear feedback from you guys. I'd love to hear what we could do specifically to help. What's the big thing we could do to help as a library system to benefit your neighborhood, and just hear feedback. I want to hear. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks so much for that. We've got 2 hands up just now. We've got Thea first and then Jen. But I'm just so blown away by your seed library that I didn't know existed. So I threw that in the chat. Boy, that's super cool. But we'll pass it to Thea first and then to Jen. So thanks so much for all those resources, fast and furious, and really excited for the conversation tonight. So Thea, you're up first, and then Jen, you're on deck. Thea?
Well, thanks for being here. I work with the Parks and Safety kind of liaison, and we have been trying to get the library to come to Scoburg Gardens and maybe Sladden Park and do some kids programs. And when COVID hit, that kind of threw the brakes on it. Is there any way we could get a once a week program, whether it's storytelling or whatever? We want to get our parks more activated for our neighbors. So who do I talk to?
You can, I think I might have even remembered an email. We've talked about a little bit about getting out. I think I recognize your name now that we say talked about getting out more. We'd love to be able to activate that. Right now, one of the areas we're focused on is Bethel, but we'd love to reach out and work with you guys a little bit more as well, doing some outreach. I don't know about once a week. We do have
I go for big. I didn't do twice a week.
We'd love to.
Once a month would be okay.
But we'd love to explore that more. I'll make sure you get my contact. I know we talked about that and threw that to youth services, and they didn't have the capacity at that time, but I think it's good to explore that because they've been talking about doing more of that. So let's rekindle that conversation.
Thank you.
Great.
Thank you. Thanks for your interest.
Jen, we've got you up next, and if anyone wants to chime in with a comment or a question, please feel to raise your hand or put it in the Zoom chat. Jen?
Oh, thank you for coming here tonight. Will, I meant audiobooks. That's what it was. I'm going to go check it out. I miss the library so very much. And we just have to get through this difficult time. And hopefully, and then we'll flood the place. So, but yes, the audiobooks are something that are of interest to me, and I have to learn how to work your online. It is not an easy thing to do for some reason. And I wonder if that is because I don't know how to do technical stuff, or if is it really a bit of a challenge?
You know, I find that they're all a little difficult because it's all new. So I think anyone has a little bit of trouble at the first couple times. Our librarians, our friendly librarians, would love to walk you through the process. If you're looking for e-audiobooks, I would really recommend Hoopla. It's a brilliant resource for that. It's absolutely wonderful. I think you'll be very impressed with what we have there. So I would advocate for you to give us a call tomorrow, especially since it sounds like you're maybe not feeling comfortable coming in. Getting a library card online, which works immediately. And then you can say, hey, call back or ask to be transferred to one of our friendly librarians who can walk you through the process, and you could be listening to audiobooks tomorrow. And we'd love to be able to have you, if you already have a library card, you can actually call us tomorrow and just start asking for help how to walk through. It's very normal. A lot of people feel the same situation as you, a little embarrassed, be like, I don't know, is this tough? Is this me? It just takes a few times, and once you get used to it, it'll be 1, 2, 3 magic.
Thank you kindly.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank
Wonderful. You. We've got Stephen up next, and then Will, is Hoopla, do they have kind of like a blue browser user interface on top? Great. So I'll put that in the chat for everyone as well. Stephen, you're up next.
Will, thank you for coming this evening. I'd just like to thank you for making it so smooth and safe to check out real books through the pandemic with the system that you set up. I much appreciated that. And I like to read books actually on paper. So thank you so much.
You're very welcome. And I'll have to say, I agree. I'm the same way. I love something about the reading the book, touching it, feeling it. I remember the print a lot better than I do digitally as well too. So I look at a screen all day, so it's a nice getaway. So thank you. Appreciate that kind words.
And Will, I put my contact information in a chat for
I
you.
got it. I grabbed it really quick while I'm able to multitask. So I'll put the phone number there too, but I definitely got the email.
Well, I'm not even able to do a single task, so you got to share with me your secrets. Well, I'm interested in what you're doing in Bethel. I'm curious what other neighborhoods might be doing and might be doing successfully that we could reproduce here in the Whitaker, and also kind of what are some maybe effective ways to partner, because I think it might be fun if the Whitaker Library or the Whitaker Mobile Library, I can't remember what it's called, did some cooperation, kind of came together with the Eugene Public Library and maybe brought some books out in the community in a way that people could access if they felt comfortable, like going to Equiano Coffee and going to the courtyard and picking up a book. So what's working in Bethel, and what have you seen in different communities here in the Whitaker, or maybe, or excuse me, here in Eugene, or other cities that you'd want to reproduce or recreate here?
Yeah, so Bethel, actually, we're in the nascent stages of exploring that right now. We set aside, before the pandemic, we set aside money to specifically activate early literacy in that area. And so we were working on that. It was put on hold for a little bit, the pandemic. I hate to use it as an excuse, but it is kind of what it is. And so we were just exploring some mini outreaches rather than doing like full library stop bookmobile. We're talking about maybe some small neighborhood activities. Sometimes there's not as much engagement in those areas. And so we really want to engage with the community, make sure that we can work and kind of get bigger library programs, drive them to our library, because we did a survey recently and 20% of residents didn't know about the Bethel Branch Library. So we wanted to be a little more community centric there. That's been kind of a way that we can get more activity in there, and could be something we could do in the Whitaker as well too. If we're trying it in that area just as a kind of a pilot project, and that we could spread that on if that's a successful thing. That's part of also what that funds was set aside. That's kind of a catchment area to see if we can move those falling third grade reading levels. And so that we'd love to be able to potentially bring that as well. We just want to make sure it's a good program. And then there was another part to your question. I got so involved in asking it. I'm sorry.
Oh, no, not at all. I just asked what's Bethel doing, and then what are some other cities doing as well that we might be able to reproduce here in the Whitaker. Maybe there's some other libraries across the country or across the world. You're like, man, this is really exciting. And what are some potential programs that we might be able to explore and maybe do our homework and then come back to you saying, hey, this sounds like an interesting opportunity, or be able to go out and get grant funding to do, because I know that either FTE or programs, they cost money.
Yeah, so I'll just, a couple that come to mind is the Spokane Public Library. Really did a great job with the Harwood model. It's like turning outward to the community, seeing what they want. They did a great job analyzing what those community needs were, and they found out that there was a park near the library that people had constantly talked about that wasn't in good order, and all the library staff got together and cleaned it. So I think for us, while that's, I don't know, I'm not advocating we're going to go out and clean the parks. We're not looking to do that. Potentially we could, but it's something that we really want to look at. You heard me talk about earlier, is where we fit in the community as a whole, rather than saying, hey, here's the library, we're this big building, come by and see us. We have to get out in the community and figure out where are the areas we are to make the most impact and where the community needs us. So Spokane did a great job with that. Dayton in Ohio did something very interesting. It doesn't necessarily look at the outreach component, but they did a really interesting thing where they actually worked with an internet company that provides internet, and they were able to give, I think, 500 or 1,000 folks internet. So, you know, the internet looks more and more like it's something that's it really is not a want, it's a need at this point to work, to play. And so the library could be a potential conduit for information access. That's what we've always done. Looking at new and different ways. That's why we check out those hotspots, because we're trying to bridge that digital divide that we're seeing. So that's an attempt to try to close that gap. And I think there's more that we could potentially do as a libraries as a whole that we could even bring and see how we could help connect the community at a reasonable cost. And then the other bit is Topeka, Kansas has, they only have one library. They're a larger community, but they have 55 bookmobiles. I don't know if we want 55, but maybe we could try to do some more mobile libraries. We have a mobile van that we use. We'd love to be able to get that to do some outreaches in the community at other places. So that's something we'd love to kind of integrate ourselves more in what we're trying a little bit here with the Bethel area.
Thank you so much. Councilmember Syret, I think you're going to be our last comment for Will tonight.
Sure. First, I just have to call foul on the multiple butt shots from Margaret's cat. Sorry. It's a
She
Zoom
won't leave
moment.
me alone tonight. I've tried. Sorry.
It's okay. It could have been my cat. Hey, Will, nice to see you twice in one day.
I know. Pleasure's
So you
mine.
mentioned very briefly the Imagination Library and that it's been expanded, but not everyone might know unless you've presented to the council before when I wasn't here. So maybe you could just touch on a little bit what that program is.
So the Imagination Library, it's a Dolly Parton Imagination Library. It's funded by the Eugene Public Library Foundation. It's free for participants to be able to use. Anyone with a child between 0 and 5 years. 5 years, they're actually given a graduation book out of the program. So my daughter Lily is going to be soon out of that program. But they basically get a free book sent to them every single month. It was for only the Eugene Public Library District. And then we partner with United Way. They covered some area too. And then there's another organization that does part of the coast and rural Lane County. We all partnered together to make sure there was some donut holes within there. And we partnered together to make sure all of Lane County, every single child 0 to 5 qualifies for the Imagination Library. Gets a free book sent to them every single month, high quality. It also mentions like ways you can interact better with it. And I've been in the library school, and I will tell you those tips are top notch, and I'm learning something from them as well. So I go, ooh, that's a really good engagement tip. So I would definitely advocate that if you know anyone in your life in Lane County between 0 and 5, get them to sign up for it. We'd love to see participation in that. Having books around and having them available is a great way to improve literacy in our community. So it's a really great bit, and I'm glad we're getting more cats on the screen here. I'm a librarian, so of course I love cats very much. So I'm the stereotypical librarian in that way. So
wow.
Yeah.
Oh no, I apologize for interrupting. I just got excited by all the cat talk. Will, please go on.
Me too. I did notice a comment in there. Mind, Ian, if I take that comment in there about the question. Okay, great. Thank you. I know my time's running late here. I appreciate that. So basically, you can go to the Imagination Library website or the library's website. You can go to, I don't remember the website, but if you look up Dolly Parton Imagination Library, it can help. It can locate it, type in your zip code where you live. It'll say, here's where your partner is, and you can sign up, do it all online. You could also visit our website, look up the Imagination Library in the library's website search, and it'll pop up a way that it'll link you straight to sign up for it. So go online. If you Google Dolly Parton Imagination, very good. Thank you. In the chat, you're great, Ian. I appreciate you. I'm going to invite you to all my meetings because you're right on the spot. I appreciate you. So I'd love to work with you anytime. So yeah, go to that site and you can sign up right there.
Great. Well, between me and Margaret's cat, I think we've got you covered on both ends. And Will, what just a wonderful just array of resources. I've certainly learned a lot. The Seed Library has just got me in a tizzy, but also learning about the hotspots that y'all give out, the outreach that you do, the Imagination Library. These are all things that we certainly want to share more with our community, particularly as we start to imagine our own way. How we might be able to work with y'all to better address our community needs and create some opportunities for partnership. We certainly have a lot of like little free libraries in the Whitaker, places where people can put in books or take them out, but we'll have to come back to you. And I know that Thea has already started a conversation with you, so really excited for tonight. And we'll be posting this meeting onto a Whitaker neighborhood Facebook page for folks to be able to see and watch at their leisure. So just wanted to say thanks again for everyone who joined tonight and presented. We're going to be having a board of directors meeting next week. For those of you who want to see the exciting business of nonprofit governance, we're going to be talking about some things like our updating of our charter, which is being led by 2 of our board members, Jen and our treasurer, Delinia, as well as have some updates regarding our COVID grants, talk about spreading our secretary duties to members so we're able to take our minutes. I took minutes tonight, and I can tell you, boy, I really appreciated the work that Angie's done over the past couple of months, because it's not easy. But for any of you who are members of the public who want to be able to attend our board meeting, they're not certainly as exciting and riveting as our general meetings, because we don't have wonderful speakers like Will, but they're super important nonetheless, and kind of gives you an understanding of the business of getting our work done and serving our community. So it's the same Zoom link as tonight, and it's from 7 to 9 a week from tonight. That's going to be Wednesday, January the 19th. So thanks again, everyone, for spending time with us this evening. And please do reach out via Facebook or via email if you have questions or comments regarding any of the speakers tonight. So thanks again. Stay safe. And remember that you can get tested for COVID, either symptomatic or asymptomatic, at the University of Oregon MAP program. And we'll be sharing that information on our Facebook socials as well. So thanks, everyone. Hope you have a great night.